Good morning, fight fans. Welcome to the Total Takedown. This is the UFC Vegas 103 edition of the show. On this show, we look at my favorite 4 or 5 totals. We go over the card and see if we can find some additional value here, maybe find a way to play these things without having to pick a side. Instead, we'll go over and under. If it's your first time, do me a favor and get subscribed. If not, you guys know who you are, my loyalists, my die-hard Total Takedown fans. Appreciate you guys being here. Let me know what your favorite total for UFC Vegas 103 is here in the comment section below. And if you're an audio listener, you might as well go ahead and leave a 5-star review. That'll be the longest way you guys can, or the best way you guys can support me. Appreciate you guys as always, and let's get into it. The first fight of the night that I want to go ahead and talk to you guys about is Charles Johnson and Ramazan Timov. I was not prepared to pronounce that this morning. My lips are not loose enough, and I haven't had my caffeine. So Johnson versus Timov has a 2.5 total. The over 2.5 is about minus 215. The under 2.5 plus 165. Now for a Charles Johnson fight, that's a pretty low number for the total. We usually see nice heavy chalk to the over 2.5s in Charles Johnson fights. I'm a little bit tempted to try and turn this thing around and bet on some violence here in this fight, because Charles Johnson has said that he's got a shift in mentality. He is no longer training to win these fights. He's no longer training for his opponents. He's training to dominate. He wants to go out there and wants to absolutely dominate people, leave zero questions, and not let it go to the judges anymore. And we saw that in the Josh Van fight, that he actually turned up when Josh Van was supposed to be the one turning up. And Charles Johnson got him out of there with a round 3 TKO. Now, Timov is a guy who is relatively untested at these levels, and when I did go back and watch one of the fights where he was able to go the full 15 minutes, he was basically Youssef Zalaling round 3, guys. He was on his bike, he was skipping around the cage, and this was a guy with like a 500 record, a guy that was like 18-16 or something like that. It was lower than that. It was like 12. It was like 12-9. But like he was a terrible regional scene fighter that was mainly just a wrestler, and Timov was just running from him in the 3rd round, trying to keep his lungs full of air. If that happens in this fight, Charles Johnson's going to put this guy through the floor. Similarly, if Timov lands on Charles Johnson, he can be clipped. He's been hurt a couple times. He's been rocked a couple times. I actually think there's a chance we see violence in this fight, believe it or not. Plus 165 for the under 2.5 is kind of the lean I've got here in this spot. I'm not sure if I want to full-on pull the trigger on it, but it's something I wanted to mention. Danny Silva and Lucas Almeida is the next total I want to bring to your attention, you guys. I actually made this my very first bet of the week. I played Fight Doesn't Go the Distance at minus 140. Right now, I see the 2.5 total sitting over 2.5 plus 105, under 2.5 sitting at about minus 135. So for a 5 extra cents, I got those 2 minutes of Fight Doesn't Go the Distance. Now, obviously, money has come in on this under. My guy Art on Monday's show, we talked about this one. He locked the bet in right there live on the show, and it was minus 120 not to go the distance. So it initially was a pick'em for this fight, over or under. Just the way these two guys fight, I can't see this thing lasting. Danny Silva likes to get right in your face, stay in front of you, cut the cage off. He doesn't run. He doesn't move. He wants to just stand there and trade right in front of his opponent. Lucas Almeida, similarly, is a Terminator. This guy likes to stalk his opponent, come forward, be heavy on his feet, and wing bombs. Both these guys want to really just kind of throw down until somebody falls. Danny Silva doesn't have much defense to speak of. Like, he's starting to roll with stuff. He's starting to shell a little bit, but he swings hooks with his hands low, and he uses that chin and relies on that durability. Lucas Almeida, he's getting a little older. He's been finished a couple times already, and he's more worried about finishing you than not getting finished himself. Both these guys can finish. Both these guys have been finished. I do like violence in this fight, and that's one actually that I have already put the bet in on. Ricardo Ramos and Chepe Maros-Skull is another one here that I want to talk to you about. You guys know I like the Chepe side of things. I already parlayed Chepe. That's a little terrifying. That number is dropping, which I locked in my anchor parlay on Chepe last night. Looks like somebody had some interest in Ricardo Ramos while I was sleeping. That's upsetting. Anyway, the total here is 2.5. The over 2.5 plus 110. The under 2.5 minus 140. I want to talk about violence here in this one yet again, because I think Ricardo Ramos can be had, right? This guy's been finished several times already. He leaves his neck out there for people to guillotine. He leaves his legs out there to be chopped at. He was basically TKO'd by Joshua Kleebow in the first round, and then Josh let him off the hook. He could have just kept chopping those legs, and the fight essentially would have been over. Now, when Ricardo Ramos wins fights, it's via flying knee, spinning elbow, or he gets on somebody's back and finds his way to a rear naked choke. So he's very, very dangerous, and if he's gonna win, it's gonna be inside the distance. So both these guys are finishers, under 2.5, -140. I kind of like that look. I can see Ricardo Ramos just kind of taking a beating and giving out because of Chepe's cardio and pace and pressure. And then I can also see Chepe Maros-Skull, hopefully not, getting caught with some kind of a guillotine choke or something like that if he decides to get in there and grapple a little too much with the BJJ black belt. So I'm looking for under, hoping it's on the Chepe side because that's where the majority of my bets are this week. Next one, Lane versus Pinto, a 1.5 that's a pick 'em. They've got it juiced on both sides to -115, which is scummy, by the way. If you look at this one over on Bet Openly, as you guys know, sponsor of the show, that's going to be +100 on both sides. Everybody gets a better number. Winner pays 1%, and we're saving money lifelong. So -115 on both sides is a little bit scummy. I would say under, though, here. Austin Lane, I know in his last fight, he came out against Robelis de Spain, and he put on a grappling clinic. Robelis has no idea what he's doing on the ground, had zero interest in learning how to do get-ups or defend takedowns, and now the guy's fighting over in karate combat because of it. So props to Austin Lane for doing something a little different. Props to Austin Lane for going out there and getting a win. However, I don't think that's going to work on this kid. This kid's coming up knowing full well he's fighting in MMA. This kid's got a very heavy base. He's got very fast hands. He is patient. He's a counter striker. So I actually think that Mario Pinto is going to land on Austin Lane. I think he's going to do it relatively early. And we all know that when Austin Lane gets going in a fight, it's kill or be killed. This guy gets it done in round 1 or he dies in round 1 basically immediately. So I kind of like an under 1.5 there. Similarly, Danny Barlo and Sam Patterson, the over 1.5 is +100. The under 1.5 is -120. And I like the under 1.5 here again because Sam Patterson starts fast, man. I'm worried about his durability. We all know the left hand to God of Danny Barlo is going to absolutely wreck his chin if he runs into it. But if he doesn't, we've seen Danny Barlo take some big shots too. Josh Quinlan was landing on this guy. He is still very, very green. We're not entirely certain if his ground game is any good. Sam Patterson is a BJJ black belt and a very good one. He's also very tall and long, and he hits hard. So if you give up those moments where you can get clipped like you were against Josh Quinlan, somebody like Sam Patterson is going to make you pay for that. I actually think violence is totally on the table for both sides of this fight. People are underestimating the offensive abilities of Sam Patterson. I do want to go ahead and mention that, yeah, that chin is an issue, and that's part of why this under 1.5 might get home. But I actually think Sam can pull his own weight, and he might be able to go ahead and finish Danny Barlo as well. So I like the under 1.5 here for Barlov and Patterson. And finally, the last one that I want to talk to you guys about is Cody Brundage and Julian Marquez. Under 1.5 is -145. Over 1.5 is +115. This one is a little bit testy. So these guys are friends, former training partners, etc. Both of them with their backs against the wall. And I actually think this under 1.5 can hit. Normally in that case, I like to look at the overs. I like to look at fight goes the distance. These guys are buddies. They don't want to hurt each other. But Cody Brundage is the biggest quitter the UFC has ever seen. Julian Marquez wants to come out here and win this fight. He wants to save his job. Cody's talking about, renewed respect for the sport, and he's all the way back, and he just got his Turkish haircut done and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is, if stuff gets hard, Cody will fold, and Julian Marquez is not going to carry him for 2.5 rounds while this guy is just basically hanging on for dear life. I'm sorry, he's not that good of a friend. He's going to go out there, save his job, make sure he can make money going forward, and he'll get the win. So I think Cody Brundage is going to have to do his usual start fast, and if he doesn't put Julian Marquez away, Julian will get him out of there in the second round. I highly doubt it'll take until the third because Cody doesn't get to thirds. So under 1.5 at -145 seems almost a little bit trappy, especially with the storylines and stuff like that, but I really do think this one's hitting you guys. That's the total takedown. I'm probably going to add a couple of these to my official card. I like violence on this card. It's sketchy. Be careful. Watch your back out there, and please don't let Chepe Maros-Skull get submitted. I really don't want to have that move in my face when I just made anchor parlays. Good luck, guys. We'll see you tomorrow for the Undefeated Post Weigh-In Show. Let's roll.